Hey everybody, super good to be live again, and I have a special guest here, Shawn Pean. And really the purpose of Decommerce Live is because as we're building Decommerce, I just get to meet so many amazing people. And the goal with the lives is really to have these conversations live and share them, because these are just so many nuggets of insights and experience that I love to share. And so I'm really excited to have you here, Shawn, after we met in New York a couple of weeks ago over dinner. And in a nutshell, you're the founder of June79, but you have a lot of industry experience in a lot of different positions and companies, from huge to really niche. And I'd love for you to maybe briefly introduce yourself.
Yeah, thank you for the warm intro. Yes, we met during what I thought was a very amazing and well curated dinner with Fashion Innovation in New York. So my career and background before launching June79 about 3 years ago was mostly on the business side of fashion. And so my career started off with JCPenney, kind of learning the ins and outs in their corporate office of all parts of retail and fashion, from the sourcing side to the marketing side to planning, buying, merchandising, product development. And I really settled on buying. Buying is where I really thought my strength would be, more left brain, right brain ways of driving your business. And so for me, that was I got to be both creative and analytical, and that was what I thought my strength was. And so really focused down that career path, and it really worked out. And so from there, I was at Macy's. Spent a couple of years there, and then I went to Saks. And Saks is really where I made a name for myself, being able to drive business, but also create pockets of business that really didn't exist before, and turn that into a viable commerce for the brand and for the store. And so spent about 10 years there. And then from there, went to Valentino, operating their wholesale business in North America. So did that for a number of years, and then took over for the business development down in South America, and opened up and worked with partners down there, franchisees, and then also opening up a store in Panama as well. And then from there, our parent company was also in the process of buying Valmont out of Paris. And so was given the opportunity to manage and be the president and managing director of that business for the Americans. And so that was a huge opportunity for me as well, because that brand was really on the cusp with what Olivier Rousteing was building and what he built. We were able to kind of come in and really identify opportunities of growth within the US market. So opened the LA store, as well as the Vegas store in Brazil as well. And so for me, doing that, being part of that was huge. And then the pandemic came around. And so, looking at new opportunities and like what was next for my career, for me, I knew that my strength is building and finding pockets of business that wasn't there. So June79 really was birthed out of that thought process, and really finding, these voids in the market. And I think at the time the world was changing. Men wanted to dress, but didn't necessarily want to dress up in the more traditional sense of suiting and tailoring. And so what is the hybrid that you can still show up, be professional, and still be casual, stylish, and cool? And so June79 was built. And so we found success in doing that. We're still a young company, still 3 years in, but that is where, for us, we felt there's a huge opportunity for guys who want to wear June79 and show up in places and kind of be all things to all people, which usually or traditionally has been hard to do as a fashion brand, is be all things to all people. You have to choose a lifestyle. But I think we've actually nailed it in doing so. And so that's where I am now. That's what I'm doing, and finding success in.
Having been in so many different positions in so many different companies, and I was founding, it really sounds like you most likely also met so many different people from all kinds of different trades, backgrounds, etc. So I'd love to ask you, what community means to you.
Community is a very important word that I think people take for granted. Community for me is building trust with, a group of people to build something bigger. And so what I mean by that, and it's funny, I used to use community in more my corporate roles, because whenever our team would come together, they would use the word family. Oh, we're like a family. We're like a family. And I said, not necessarily. I feel like we're more like a community. Because a family, you can't fire your family. They're there forever, no matter what, But a community, I'm trusting you to get done what needs to be done so that we can build something greater. And so when I think about community, it's about a large part of trust. It's about understanding who's in front of you and who's around you, what their strengths are, what their weaknesses are, focusing on their strengths, minimizing their weaknesses, but really building something greater. And so community for me, when I think about it, it really helps people understand how to work together in both good times and tough times and navigate that, and how to navigate those emotions, how to navigate everything about someone who's very different than you. And so that to me is what it means. But I think at the end of the day, it boils down to trusting, each other or one another.
So really boiling down to trust and finding the right people to connect and build. And there, from you having these two really very contrasting experiences from very big brand, corporate worlds, international, to starting your own business, your own brand, how have you felt like parallels, but also maybe strong differences in community building in a business sense?
Yeah, I think in a business sense, when you come into a very big company or big brand, the community is already set. So you're assimilating yourself into that community, and it's got to work, right? You got to find what part of that community do you make sense in for you to build it. And I think with community, the word that you use, which is kind of the same Latin subset of, connection, right? We have to connect. And so when you're connecting the community, it's already built. The culture is already set. For me, being an entrepreneur and a founder, I now had to go out and build my own community. And so when you're building a community, it looks and feels the way that kind of I build it. If I come in and I'm, and I'm more of a authoritarian in this community, it looks and feels like that. But if I'm more of an open mindset, hey, I want to hear what you think. I want to hear what you think. And everyone has a voice, and your voice is allowed to be heard. And whether we choose to go that direction or not, you then feel like you're part of a bigger community. And so for me, that's what I wanted to build. All the environments and team settings that I had was about building the right community. And it's funny because I remember I had my boss in one of these roles used to say, I need you to get the most out of people. You have to get the most out of people. And I challenged him. I said, I don't want to get the most out of people. I want to get the best out of people. And when you get the best out of people, it doesn't feel like work. And then the work is so much better for them because you're getting what they're really good at. And so for me, that was an important part of building a community, is how do I get the best out of everyone? And so it looked different because I wasn't necessarily walking into something, I was building something. And that's where you get to shape it and mold it in a way that is what I think in today's environment, healthy and fruitful to drive and build a business.
Wow. And it sounds like you have it very present and now, can you maybe share a bit more? Like, let's go 3 years back, right? So you come out of all these experiences with big brands and having worked in those very big, also corporate environments. Where were you there, and what was your vision for June79? And how did you think about what you just shared back then?
I felt it was important. I think throughout my career, I've always looked at not necessarily what I wanted to build, because you never know what's in front of you. You never know what's going to happen a few steps down the line. You know what's in front of you. But I knew what was behind me and what I kind of focused on what I didn't want to happen, right? And so I used to, when I was very young in my career, when I was at JCPenney or Macy's, or even, early days at Saks, I used to say, I don't know what kind of boss I'm going to be, but I know what kind of boss I don't want to be. And so taking that, there was an innate understanding for me is I don't want our environment to look like this. I want it to look like this. So 3 years ago, for me, it was, I know what I don't want it to look like. And so once I removed that part from it, what was
Can
left.
you give me an example of what you didn't want it to be like?
I didn't want the culture and community to be where people felt stressed about the work that they were putting in.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't want, you see some environments where people don't enjoy it. And being in a fashion space is a very unique space. And I say that because fashion is the only business, at least from my lens, that you get so many different trains of thought and points of views. Because most people who are doctors all go through the same training. They go through med school and pre-med and all that. Lawyers all go through, law school. Every profession, accountants, every profession go through a certain level of training that for the most part, everyone is thinking the same. There may be some nuances there, but you're thinking with fashion, you have people who come in, they're psychologists, they were a construction major, they were a marketing major, a business major. So all these different mindsets and different frames of thought and training and references are now in one room. And so you can't sit there and say, well, everyone now has to think like this. They've had years of thinking differently, and to put them in a room and allow them to think the same. So for me, that's what I was dealing with. So my example of that is, hey, I understand you think differently. Let me hear your point of view, because it may sway or help how I choose to do what's next. And then there were some cases, there were ideas that were brought forth. I'm like, great idea, but it doesn't apply to this, or we don't necessarily need it right now, but we need ideas like that for something maybe slightly different. And I think that when you look at it from that lens, what it allows is that from a community and culture standpoint, it's like, oh, they didn't use my idea, but I was still heard. And I think that's what people really want in the community is that, hey, is my voice heard? And I think, we see that in the USA today. Everyone wants to be heard, right? And so I think that in the work setting, it's even more important. Everyone is building something greater, which is the community. And so that culture then looks and feels like I matter. And once you feel and understand that you matter, the work that you're going to put forth makes a huge difference. And so when I was looking to build a community, that was the goal. That was the ultimate goal, is that while I have this idea and I have this vision of what this brand is going to be, I also want anyone that I sit with and decide to bring into the organization. I brought you in for a reason. I didn't bring you in because you thought like me, feel like me. It's because you have a very different point of view, a very different point of reference, and I want to hear it, because then that allows me to cover some blind spots. It allows me to say, you know what, I wasn't looking at it from this point of view. This is helpful. And I think that's where it becomes super important to build something that's bigger than yourself, because at the end of the day, you want to build a brand that's bigger than you, right? And so that's the way that brands survive and last, stand the test of time. It has to be bigger than you, because if it's not bigger than you, it ends with you.
I think that's super interesting. I'd love to hear more about that particular thing. So let's say the values and really the vision behind June79 and how you bring in those different opinions and feedbacks into this vision as well.
The vision is one thing, right? Because the vision is made, it's set. And our vision, when you look at our brand, we started off with our tagline was pursuit of the unsuit. That was our tagline, and it kind of spoke to who we weren't. But I really wanted to identify with who we were, which is tailored casual. We are defining a very undefined space of tailored casual. And what does tailored casual look like? Where someone is still tailored, but there's a casual element that they're relaxed, confident, and still can command a room, and with us too, that our logos are very minimal. So what the goal was to allow people to represent the best version of themselves. Well, the opinion that came in with that were the nuances of not just the product, but how we speak to the consumer about the product, how we drive business with the product, and so on and so forth. So those opinions, they matter. And someone can say, hey, are we tapping into this market? Are we tapping into that market? And if not, maybe we should try A, B, and C, or we're trying X, Y, and Z to already A, B, and C that's already set, right? And that's how you kind of marry up those equations to build a business that's healthy. But you've also tapped into something that you weren't, that opinion allowed you to tap into something that you weren't tapping into before, that broadens the scope of the brand. And if you have enough of those, you're going to continue to broaden, grow, and build a business in a way that, going back to what I said earlier, how can you be all things to all people? That is a way to be all things to all people, because all those diverse opinions and thought processes, they matter. They matter in a business like this, because we're not just going after one lifestyle or subset or clientele. We're going after a pretty broad demographic, because the world is connected differently today. There was a time in which you lived in, I don't know, and I'm speaking specifically to the US, but let's say you lived in Georgia, right? You always came to New York to get your fashion, or you always came to LA to get like a certain look. That's not the case anymore. You look at your phone and you can see what's hot, what's going on, what's happening, whether it's local, national, or global. We now have to talk in those kind of three-tiered prongs to make sure that everyone understands, oh, this is what this brand is about. And at the end of the day, it's up to the consumer to choose whether it's for them or not. But at least we're giving them that choice real time.
And let's talk about the consumer for a little bit, because it's a topic you bring up a lot. And I think I would say traditionally, especially in the fashion and maybe even high fashion world, even more so, it used to be said the consumer doesn't know what they want. Like we'll serve them and they're good enough, they can buy it. And there are completely different brands now that actually really care and listen to consumers. How do you stand between those, having seen, I guess, even both worlds?
The number one rule of any any brand or product, whether it's CPG, luxury fashion, opening price point, how does your product relate to the consumer? That is and always will be the number one kind of ground-based rule of building your brand or building your product. How does it relate to the consumer? So I think that if you stop listening to the consumer, you'll find yourself eventually in trouble. And I think, when you look at the luxury space, I think there was a time in which they were, I wouldn't say listening, but they understood who their consumer was. Now that's evolved, and you're seeing luxury kind of have this challenge now driving sales. Their price points are higher, but while their price points have gotten higher, they stopped listening to the consumer. And so when you stop, you're just saying, well, this is what we think you want. This is what we're going to give you. Here you go. And the consumer, maybe there's a small percentage saying, hey, this is great. I still love what you stand for. But a large subset are clearly saying, it's not quite what I'm looking for. And I don't know where I'm wearing this to. Or I don't know if this applies to my lifestyle for where I'm at, because also that consumer grows up a little bit, right? So 10 years ago, if I was 25, it may have been great. But now that I'm 35, I don't know if I want to still dress like that or identify with that. So are you listening to that? And so I think that, when you look at the principles of the consumer today, it's absolutely shifted over the past 20, but really over the past 10 years, because their phones are like right here. If you think about consumer behavior and getting into the psyche of the consumer, everything has changed. There was a time where they would wake up, make their coffee, read the newspaper, maybe they check their calendar, but they have time to kind of like process their day, what's happening around them. Now you wake up, you know what's going on Instagram between all your friends, everything you follow, your calendar, you've read your emails, you have gone through Facebook, Twitter, everything, global news, all this, and you haven't even gotten out of bed yet. You're still laying in bed. And so what happens to the brain? You have now downloaded all this information on top of the 40 marketing ads and emails, whether it's from like West Elm on furniture, Shein, Temu now has the heavy, hey, you want to get a pool for $29.99? You have that as well. But you've now downloaded all this information from world politics, news, friends, and marketing and shopping habits, and you haven't even figured out what to do with all that information. So now that information is here. You are trying to assimilate what works for you, whether you want it or not, whether you can afford it or not, whether you want to spend that or not. So there's a huge shift in the consumer behavior. And so what's happened is, while this shift has happened, I think a lot of the brands have failed to realize what that shift looks like. And so in doing so, how can you connect with the consumer whose brain is now, it's a very high-end processor, because it's downloading information within a short span of time. And even, there's times you see like kids and they swipe way faster than I can ever swipe. They're like, did you even see anything? They're like, yeah, they said they can tell you everything that they saw within 30 seconds of swiping 100 pictures. It's absolutely incredible, but their brain is downloading all that information. And, I guess at some point they're figuring out what to do with it later, but that's the evolution. And so now we're seeing that AI is also added into the equation, which is also removing some other functions that the brain used to do, and it's now focused on this very quick downloading of information and taking that. So long-winded, but that's kind of like what's happening with the consumer and how that's evolving.
So much more information available at all times. Yeah. And what does that mean for you as brand founder, as marketeer, as product developer? How do you communicate with your consumer, and how do you really listen to them? How do you think about that?
Yeah, for me, my approach is to be the fine balance. I want to be the fine balance of evolution and revolution, right? And so they're both happening. And if you can talk to the consumer in a way that you understand that they're evolving, you understand that the revolution is happening in terms of like the information age, because we're still at the dawn of it, right? This is still the early part of the information technological age of AI. And, even when you look at now with ChatGPT and kind of like how you can create a whole storyline without the creativity is now in the computer, right? So between those, I think for us, it's how do you continue to be that fine balance where they understand that we we still rely on connectivity of people, which is why there's a huge push in going back to work. The productivity when you're interacting with your peers, your colleagues are super important. At the water cooler or grabbing lunch together, the connectivity is super important. And so we want to meet on that intersection of connectivity, which to me is that fine balance of both. And that's our approach to it. It allows us to be a little bit more nimble. It allows us to make sure our messaging hits the way that it needs to, so that people understand that, hey, we're here to stay. We are a brand that you can count on. We are a brand that hits on a certain touch point within your life. Because I've gotten comments, about our product and what it means to people. And one of the best compliments that I ever got was from one of our consumers who we had a pop-up shop in Soho, and he tried on the jacket, really loved the jacket, and became a consumer who bought more multiple purchases over time. But I remember him saying, I love June79. I didn't know I needed something like this. And he said, the last time I felt like that was when I got an iPhone. And it really hit me. That same response that you just had, that's the same response. It took a hot second, and I was just like, wait a minute, that's a huge compliment. And he said that because I can wear it anywhere. I've had board meetings, and I'll wear it to a board meeting on a Saturday morning because I got to be there, but I don't want to wear a suit. And I didn't know anything other to wear than a suit. But now I have this, and I didn't know I needed this, and I wear it everywhere. And so, every color he has, every jacket, our pants, our trousers, So when you hit that point of kind of consciousness of a consumer, you know that you're on the right path. And so for me, that's been a huge motivating factor for us to continue down this path and continue to drive our business.
That is a huge compliment.
Yeah.
It must be super nice to hear that as a founder, to somebody compliment your product in that way. And from here, so from your founder self now, with all this experience and being really nimble and really close to consumers, what would be your advice to in a very big brand, to be closer to their consumers?
My advice to my past self, closer to the consumer, is meet them where they are. I think in some cases, we've gotten so comfortable with bringing the customer to us, but we have to do a better job of meeting them where they are. Whether, out-of-home marketing versus in-home marketing has completely changed, because now there's the phone, the power of the phone has changed how you can reach a consumer. We did some events, but I would have done a lot more touch point events to continue to connect the consumer. I think we relied on DTC too early at a very injunct time. And so I would have kind of switched that up a little bit, but meeting the consumer where they are, allowing them to connect with the product continuously. For me, that would be probably one of the, outside of line up an investor and make sure that they're all ready to go. But, I think for small startup like us, while we push those things, those are the things that I probably would go back and tell myself 4 years ago.
Amazing. I know it's a bit of a thought experiment, but I thought it'd be interesting to hear that from you.
It's a great question.
Amazing. Well, we're already at the half hour. I do have a last question that I wanted to ask, that I usually ask, is on when we talk about audiences, community, consumers, all of that. If you could pick one of two, which one would you pick and why? Would you want to have an additional 100,000 social media followers on a social media channel like Instagram or somewhere else, X or whatever you want, or 1,000 super fans that and you engage with on a daily basis for your brand?
Me personally, I would take the 1,000 super fans.
Okay, interesting. Why?
I think when you have 100,000 followers, you have 1,000 super fans. The other ones, they're the fast followers, right? There's your leaders, there's your fast followers, and there are people that are following them. But the 1,000 super fans who I can connect with will always support the brand, the product, and they're also become the messengers of the brand, the product. One of the things that I always go by and I always talk about is the movie theater thought process. And I'll give this one example. When a movie comes out, and if it gets 5 stars and everyone's saying this, this is a 5-star movie, but if one of your friends goes to you and says that movie is absolutely trash, do not go see it, it was a waste of time, chances are you're not going to go see it. But if a movie gets 1 star and your friend is like, this was the most incredible piece of art and work that I've ever seen, I can't believe it got 1 star, you have to go see it, you're going to go see it. And so despite what the reviews are from the masses, the people that you connect with the most, those instances change how you view something. For me, those 1,000 fans can change how the rest of the world views what we're doing because they love it, they're passionate about it. It changes the connectivity of it. And so for me, the 1,000 versus the 100,000 that you don't necessarily connect with are way more important because at the end of the day, it becomes bigger than yourself, right? And over time, you can grow into 100,000 of these small ones, it's all said and done.
Love that. And so where can those 1,000 super fans find you? What's the best place?
Find me or the brand. They can find
your
the
brand.
Me, I'm, I'm a family guy.
Find your brand.
Yeah, find the brand on June79nyc.com. But they can also follow me on social. I'm on Instagram, Mr.Shawn.P. And then the brand is also on Instagram and on Twitter or X as well as on TikTok. So June79NYC.
Amazing. And we'll share the links in the comments as well.
Thank
Thanks
you
so much, Shawn. This was wonderful.
Great.
And we'll connect offline again. Thanks so much.
No, thank you. Appreciate it. This is fun.
And we'll be live tomorrow again. See you there. Thanks. Bye.